All right, happy 4th of July. Go, 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 go.
Ladies and gentlemen, and anyone else that I may have left out, welcome to Cordkillers, the show that wants to help you watch what you want, when you want, where you want, on any damn device you please. I'm Tom Merritt.
Hey, man, I'm Brian Brushwood, and that was our special guest. 7,000 fireworks being detonated simultaneously due to a computer error. It's an older clip from like 2012, but in honor of 4th of July, I thought it belonged on the show. How you doing, Tom?
I'm doing great. I had a lovely Independence Day. I don't think I saw a single firework, to be honest, but I saw the fireworks of love at Nerdtacular.
I heard a lot of fireworks.
Actually came out a lot different than I meant it to be. I had a good time at Nerdtacular is what I was trying to say.
I heard a ton of fireworks, either that or drive-bys, because now I'm in L.A., as you know. Down the street from you, Tom, less than 2 miles away.
Yeah. Is it less than 2 miles?
Yeah, dude.
So
it's a quick
if I reached out,
yeah,
I could basically, you feel that?
Oh, hey. No, wait, wrong side. All right, keep going, keep reaching. Oh, there it is, Tom.
Yeah, look at that. It's amazing.
All right. I say we just right in.
Yeah, we're doing the show a little later. If you're watching live or if you're wondering why it didn't show up in your feed as fast, although it probably will show up around the same time in the feed because of travel, because of stuff. But we are here and we are ready for the primary target.
You got that right.
Just the primary target this week. YouTube now adding a link to videos that aren't doing well. So if you're watching a YouTube video and it starts buffering or stuttering or slowing down, YouTube, in some cases, and I had an email to Daily Tech News Show confirming this from one listener, will give you a little blue pop-up that says, experiencing interruptions, find out why. And you click the find out why button and it will take you to the video quality report, Brian, which we've talked about before, that shows you how well you can expect YouTube videos to perform on your ISP and then allows you to compare it to other ISPs.
So tell me this, do you think that this is a cheap shot at shaming ISPs, or is this a responsible education? Is this pushing the legitimate efforts that they put into trying to figure this out?
Google actually told the Next Web this is not a cheap shot. The Next Web had a story about this, and I guess they were a little cavalier with the way they said publicly shaming for Google's tastes. So someone from YouTube told Recode it's about educating people, not shaming ISPs. So there's your answer, Brian. YouTube says not about shaming. It's about educating.
That's YouTube's version of the answer, which I don't necessarily. I didn't ask you what YouTube said it was. I asked you what you
Brian,
say it is.
My healthcare is paid for by YouTube.
All right, I'll call it like it is. First of all, yes, it is shaming, and yes, they should be doing it because it's bogus, man. Like the whole thing, YouTube is sick of getting flack for the ISP's decision. Same thing with Netflix. They're tired of getting hammered when it's the choke point is not on their watch. And I think it's totally fine because again, they're not saying your provider sucks. What they're saying is here are the factual assessments of how your provider handles YouTube traffic. Take from that what you will. I think everybody should do this kind of thing.
Yeah, I think what's better about the way YouTube is doing it here versus what Netflix did is they're trying to give you some data. You know, that's Google, right? They're all engineers. They're all about data. So Netflix was just putting up a thing saying such and such ISP is busy right now, is crowded. I think they used the word crowded right now, which made it sound like it was entirely the ISP's fault. What YouTube does is they show you a page that says this is what your ISP should be able to do this. In fact, the guy who emailed Daily Tech News Show was laughing because he clicked the link and it told him, well, Comcast should be able to do this just fine. And he's like, but it wasn't, which almost is damning for YouTube. It's like saying, so the problem is that Comcast, Google says about itself, it could be a problem with YouTube. It could also be a problem in your home network. It could be all kinds of things. So it's the right way to go about it because it's not saying if this video is having problems, it must be your ISP. It's saying here's some information that you can use to evaluate it.
I mean, I'll tell you how bad it got at one point. When we were showing videos on NSFW show back in the day, there was so many times that it would show the first few seconds and then just lag and buffer and then and choke out. And of course, that's embarrassing when you're trying to do a live stream, when you're trying to cut to significant content or make jokes or whatever, and it would choke out. Eventually, as people pointed out that it was a problem with Time Warner and the way that it handled YouTube shaped traffic, the eventually I had to trick Time Warner's servers by blocking access to their local YouTube related IPs. Or at one point I even used a VPN just to be outside of the Time Warner ecosystem. And when this is the way that ISPs are handling traffic, I'll tell you what, man, you had an interesting special all about traffic shaping, and the weird conclusion that Jenny Josephson came to was that she kind of was against the open internet architecture. Can you talk about that for a bit?
Well, sure. And I don't want to put too many words in Jenny's mouth without Jenny around to explain what she means. But both the conclusion that I came to with our guest, and you can find that at the Daily Tech News Show YouTube channel pretty soon, was that if you put the open internet guidelines in, the way I described it at the end of the show, it's like treating a tuberculosis patient with cough medicine. It might make some of the symptoms go away, but it doesn't do anything for the underlying problem. And the underlying problem is competition. What Google's doing here actually points out whether you have competition or not in your area. And that's the problem. This should be all that needs to be done for these sorts of issues if you have enough ISPs in your neighborhood, because then you can say, gosh, I keep having these problems with YouTube, and then I look and Google's saying, yeah, this ISP just can't really handle the traffic, right? Because what happened with Time Warner and YouTube, and what happened with Netflix and Comcast, and is happening with Netflix and Verizon, is that they didn't upgrade the interconnection between the two companies. And that's not a net neutrality issue at all. That's a peering issue. That's a way the internet works issue. And open internet guidelines, first of all, wouldn't do anything about that situation. And what really should happen is the ISP should feel pressure to say, you know what, I need to keep these interconnections working because I'll lose customers. But right now, in a lot of places in the United States, customers really don't have anywhere to go. Or if they do, it's across to the street to the ISP from the telco that has exactly the same problem. And they all kind of wink and nod at each other like, yeah, I'm not going to upgrade that interconnection either because, you know what, we've got a captive audience.
Now, there was one thing you told me as we strolled down Muscle Beach, Tom, that you mentioned that
see last week's Night Attack.
Shockingly, Korea has never had any kind of regulation on their providers. Is that right?
Well, and here's what I think was most interesting is that different markets have taken different approaches to this sort of thing. So it's not one size fits all. In the United Kingdom, they've unbundled the local loop. In other words, they split British Telecom in two and said, one half is going to do the infrastructure and anybody can use it, and the other half is going to be an ISP and they'll compete with everybody else. And so a lot of calls have been like, well, you need to declare ISPs common carriers and unbundle the local loop and let everybody use the pipes. And that is one solution, and it has worked in the UK. But I was shocked to understand that in Korea, they never actually had a single provider. They never allowed a monopoly like British Telecom or AT&T to exist in the first place. They always had multiple telecoms, and maybe they didn't always have, but from what I came to understand from our guest, they had multiple telecoms, so they never had to deregulate the marketplace. And there are actually 4 or 5 infrastructures. If you move into an apartment building, there's going to be back-end infrastructure for all of those different telecoms, and they build out separately because they want to provide different kinds of service because they're competing with each other.
So as the debate, and this is what's difficult for me as somebody who only partially dabbles in the technical side of things, I'm somebody who just knows enough to get frustrated with the way things are. It seems like there's two different debates. There's traffic shaping in terms of, BitTorrent traffic gets throttled, whereas other kinds of traffic is freely flowing. And then there's separately this whole peering issue. What do you think happens to the general public over time? Does the general public ever get to understand the nuance between these different debates? Or is this the case where all anyone's going to know is I want my internet to be fast. Therefore, government do something. Are we looking at a next Obamacare for net neutrality? Basically,
Well,
is what I'm asking.
let's just throw a loaded grenade in the middle of the conversation and distract everyone's attention. Let's not use Obamacare just because that means so many different things to different people. Let's actually look at this and say, can people?
My point is that the Affordable Health Care Act was very much the response to everybody having a problem and just saying, fix it, just do something.
But Brian, as soon as you said Obamacare, a bunch of people stopped listening, stopped thinking about net neutrality, and started raising their political flags and started marching. That's why I don't want to use that. It's not that it's not an apt analogy. It's that it means so. We're going to have a side conversation about affordable health care in the United States.
That's a good point.
But what is true is that this is a technically difficult issue to understand. And it's certainly taken a lot of work on my part to gain sort of a peripheral understanding of it. And I don't even claim to understand all of it. What is true, though, what I've gotten from everybody who works in the industry, and one of the big problems is most of the people who work in these industries are under NDAs. They can't talk about some of the great examples that they could. And so our guest, Mr. Milburn, that we had on the Daily Tech News Show special, is unique because he doesn't have a job right now and he's worked in this industry, so he could talk about it. We need competition. And whether it's unbundling the local loop to create it or whether it's already having it, competition is the one thing that helps to solve all of these problems when you look at it and puts the pressure in the right places. The United States market is out of whack because ISPs have duopolies or de facto monopolies in their markets. And so now the system is actually working the way it's always worked, which is you have multiple players. You have transit providers and CDNs and peering networks and backbone providers, et cetera. And they all kind of come to business agreements about how they're going to exchange traffic. It's just that all of a sudden the ISPs, where they used to be in the 90s, a bunch of dial-up ISPs, right? And there were hundreds of them, now have all the leverage where they used to have none.
So back to my original question, what's your prediction? And I understand this is wild speculation, and I certainly won't hold you to it. But if you're going to put $20, where do you think we are 2 or 3 years from now on this issue? Have we seen legislation, or
I think 2 or 3 years from now we will either have some kind of modified open internet guideline or some kind of congressional bill that is exactly what the telecoms want. That's another thing that I realized in having this conversation is the telecoms want regulation. They just want regulation that tilts the playing field in their direction. So if you look at the history of it, they've always wanted regulation. They'll cry, no regulation, no, that's going to hurt our business, until that regulation is written in a way that actually helps them. And what they're going to try to do is affect that open internet guideline so that it is written in a way that they can take advantage of it, find a loophole to monetize.
I mean, that's the part that breaks my heart, is that at the end of the day, regulation, when you're in a position to buy favor from politicians, of course you want regulation, because you can just buy the changes that you want when you want them and how you want them. And
buy what you want, when you want.
Exactly. No,
and whatever law you please.
It's the Cordkillers of corruption is what it is. We need to do a new show, Corruption Killers.
Anyway,
well,
I do think that kind of like what YouTube is doing, and even in a ham-handed way, what Netflix is doing, is one of the best ways to call attention to this, because it does teach people, oh, it's my ISP that affects whether this stream is good or not. And a lot of people don't realize that.
Well, and that's the thing that I hope that will snap everyone to, is to like pitchforks, not lobbyists. That's what I want. I want to see people so mad that that no company would dare to piss off people by restricting their access to X, Y, or Z. And I'm not going to say that it definitely looks like it's working, and it certainly hasn't fixed everything. There's a lot of people watching. In fact, if you're watching in the chat right now, we have people who have difficulty getting connection to our show. So I'm not saying everything's all roses, but part of me just wants to say, as long as people are still angry about this, no business is going to try to buy public opinion on it in terms of trying to make internet into cable. I feel like as long as everyone stays angry, we have a chance.
All right, let's meanwhile thank our bosses, because they're the ones that tell us what to say. Totally independent.
We were born instantly, we self-made ourselves, and we exist completely in a bubble on our own. We don't have any Bosses. Name one boss.
Wait, what are you talking about? I don't have any bootstraps. I can't pull myself up by them. I've got lots of bosses. I've got an unlimited number of bosses.
Well, hold on. If you were gonna make up a number of how many bosses you have, how many would it be?
1883, Brian.
Oh God, are we that close to 2,000 bosses? That is awesome.
Just ask Christopher Baronato if you don't believe me.
Dude, that's fantastic. Of course, we're talking about all our bosses at patreon.com/cordkillers. I'm finally saying it on the right show. And who have donated and pledged to give us a few nickels every time we do this show. You have no idea how empowering it is for us to be able to tell you what we want, when we want, on whatever damn platform we feel like. And that's because of you guys, not beholden to anyone. You guys have made our dream come true. Hopefully, we're saving you a few bucks, teaching you guys how to cut the cord. If you want to cut the cord, some of you guys love cable, and that's great too. And if you want to kick a few of those nickels back our way, we sure do appreciate it.
Patreon.com/cordkillers to find out all of our bosses. Meanwhile, it's time for Signals Intelligence.
Yeah.
So Twitch, the online streaming platform, best known for streaming video gameplay, which is what you're supposed to be doing on there, is building a studio in San Francisco to host video game broadcasts. According to Chief Operating Officer Kevin Lin, we want to test ways to help our everyday streamer produce more and more premium content. We don't want to move into making our own and operated content. So new studio, it's going to open up in San Francisco. Select live casters will be allowed to use it. It'll be fully operational sometime next year, and then there'll be some sort of program, I assume, to apply to get to use it.
Number one, this is a smart move. This is, of course, aping the decision of YouTube to do the creator space. And I think it's a smart thing. I think Twitch derives a massive benefit in that it takes what otherwise might be, and I'm going to say this, it's going to sound like it's a diss on the broadcasters, but it makes it possible. Doing a Let's Play content makes it possible for somebody who may not be comfortable writing and directing their own sketches, who may not be comfortable writing, directing, shooting their own how-to videos like you see in the YouTube space, but instead people who are funny, talented, and relaxed, and maybe in markets where this kind of thing, being an entertainment mogul, wouldn't have occurred to them. It's a very structured way to get out in front of people and get their personality out there. And I think specifically of our friend of the show, Man vs. Game, who I believe is in like North Dakota or something. It's a fantastic platform. This is a great way to expand that space. I expect that once this is built, we're going to see a migration of YouTube streamers, of Let's Play streamers to that space. I think that Twitch is doing an awful lot right, integration with Sony and so on. However, as much as I love this realization that people love watching other people play games, I'm really worried that it might be built on a rickety, shabby, crumbly platform. The foundation might be weak. And what I mean by that is, our Jason Murphy is here with me, and he co-hosts Rage Select, and they've put a number of Let's Play videos with Nintendo properties on there. And Nintendo has taken to deciding that if you are on YouTube and you're doing a Let's Play with Nintendo, then no matter what you said, no matter what you did, if you featured a Nintendo property or a Nintendo video game, they are now entitled to 100% of your revenues. And they have worked it out with YouTube where they just grab all of your monetization from those videos. Now, on the one hand, I understand it's your properties, it's your music, it's your cinematics or whatever that are being shown. But on the other hand, it's just as wrong for Nintendo to grab those revenues and say, you deserve none of this. You've added nothing to this. This is all our content and it's all our money. I worry about what this precedent means for Twitch, especially as Twitch TV is looking to get bought by Google. If they're under the same umbrella, then who's to say that the same way that Nintendo has started to redirect revenues away from Let's Play videos of Nintendo properties, is that what's going to happen on Twitch.tv now? And what happens? What's the difference between a player who just shows the entire game as a movie? When a video game is a peculiar thing in that you have copyrighted music with its own set of rules. You have copyrighted cinematics with its own set of rules. And then you have the gameplay, which is this hybrid where part of it is, of course, trademark characters and unique properties, but they're being executed sometimes in unique and original ways, like Red versus Blue and Rooster Teeth, other times in very straightforward ways. There's people who edited together Uncharted as a movie for you to watch straight through. That is some murkier territory, I'm realizing, than I originally thought. And I'm curious how that will affect, number one, Twitch.tv's buying prospects, and also what shapes Let's Plays in the future.
You know, Nintendo did announce an affiliate program at E3, and they are backpedaling furiously from what you were describing, where they're like, nope, that's ours. We get to keep all the money. They realize that that's not in their best interest. So I have hope, and especially because you haven't seen other game companies come in with that heavy hand that Nintendo did, I have hope that they realize, oh, wait a minute, we need to allow this. So I'm a little more optimistic about the future of Twitch as a platform, as an intellectual property platform, because it seems like most of the game companies are on board. Now, you do point out the fact that this issue does underlie all of this, and at some point there may be a come to Jesus moment, so to speak, the way YouTube did with Viacom. But I know that if it was going to be as bad as the one YouTube had with Viacom that lasted in the courts for years and years and years and caused the Content ID robot to be invented and it had all these horrible side effects, we'd already be knowing about it. And so far, the worst thing we've had is Nintendo sort of ham-fistedly coming into YouTube and using the Content ID thing that Viacom created to put the hammer down, but they didn't touch Twitch. So I feel like that's not going to be the biggest impediment to Twitch. What I do wonder is, do you need a creator studio like this to improve Let's Play videos? I mean, Let's Play videos, I want to watch the video game. Like, what am I getting out of a studio?
Well, here's, first of all, when you watch the E3 coverage, I know Twitch.tv did their own E3 coverage, and they brought in like 7 of their top Let's Play people. And the only one I recognized was Man vs. Game, because we've had him on NSFW show back in the day, and he's a friend of the show. But once they did that, and they had sets, and they built this stuff, I think what they're doing is they're trying to build the structure to have their own version of ESPN. My guess is
but
some
they
kind of
very
collaborative.
specifically said we don't want to move into our owned and operated content.
Yeah, well, okay, that's different though. That's different. I mean, YouTube Create Space is not owned and operated content.
But Twitch wouldn't be creating an ESPN.
No, well, correct. Twitch would be facilitating the structure to ESPN legitimized a lot of sports, and it created this fever-pitch desire to watch sports on cable television. Twitch understands if they can provide that same structure, they could be the ESPN of the internet, essentially.
But then you have to pick a winner. You have to say you're going to be the ESPN of the internet, not you, because you're going to have access to the space. Twitch. The one thing YouTube doesn't do is let somebody live there. You can't be the ESPN of the internet without having a constant access to a space.
Okay, think less in terms of owning the content and being an actual team that works for a people, but instead think in terms of being just as ESPN. If you want to know how the game went, you turn on any cable television in the United States, you turn it to ESPN, and you know you're going to get the answer. That's what Twitch wants to be for gaming. You want to know how any announcement went, any major sports tournament,
by saying
you go to
ESPN.
Twitch.tv.
I think what you're saying is that Twitch wants to have channels that are the ESPN of the internet exist. And to do that, they need to let people come in and do specials.
With esports entertainment. Like esports, just as
because
ESPN
it's not a direct comparison. You can't launch the ESPN of esports, which, by the way, there's already a couple out there, and they're doing a really good job. You can't launch it using a Twitch studio space.
So they can't be the ESPN of anything. I've heard of ESPN. I haven't heard of these other guys.
No. I'm not saying that. I'm saying Twitch isn't a network.
Why not? I mean, it's a platform. It's a destination. I mean, look.
That's like saying YouTube is the HBO of the internet. It's not. YouTube is the platform upon which lots of different things can come. Same with Twitch.
Tom, yes, of course. Websites are not channels. We get that. But as far as analogs, as far as destinations, when you're on cable and you want to know how the game went, where do you go? You go to ESPN. from a branding perspective, it is the destination to find out this stuff.
Where do I go on
To
Twitch?
The internet,
I have
and
to
you
know
wanna
where to go,
how,
so I think
how
it's
the
different.
announcement went. You go to twitch.tv. I'm not talking about whether it's a channel or whether they own the content. I'm talking about from a branding perspective, they want to position themselves as the destination, just like ESPN did.
That said, I still have problems with that metaphor, but that said, you can't do that at the creative. This Twitch studio doesn't help you do that.
What, are you high? These are okay. Man versus Game has a green screen is in North Dakota. He has no way to get access to people. He has no way to bring people in. And I understand Twitch has said they don't want to produce Twitch owned content, but they want to create a space where Man could co-game with one of the
Man can't rely on that space always being there for just him. There's millions of people on Twitch. And Twitch is not going to be able to say, okay, this guy can always have the green screen. It's going to be a limited number of people that can use it for limited periods of time.
Well, what's wrong with that? I don't understand what's different. The fact is that it's high production quality studio space that he has for a little bit. I mean, so what if it's not forever?
For episodic content, that makes sense. For like ongoing, like I need to check to find out who won the tournament. That's where it starts to fall apart for me.
I'm sorry. Run that by me again. I'm not sure.
If you want it to be the place where I go to find out who won the tournament, that's something that's always on. That's always going, right? If I only have 12 episodes of something, then something like Twitch Studio is perfect.
I guess I'm just not following you. My only point is that Twitch is providing infrastructure to help make Twitch the premier destination platform for esports. And in that regard, they are.
I'm saying that I could. Let's say I can only use the Twitch Studio for even a month out of the year, and probably not even that long, because I'm one of the best people on Twitch. That doesn't help me the other 11 months of the year.
Okay. Bummer. I mean, I'm not. What is the alt? I guess I'm still not understanding you.
So if I'm trying to build a 24/7 like esports channel, I'm not going to build it in that studio.
Well, no. I mean, first of all, okay, you're confusing, Tom. I'm not saying that you get to move in and become ESPN. I'm saying Twitch.tv becomes ESPN. You get to rent a cubicle you get to rent a racquetball court for a little bit and use it to do your stuff. Meanwhile, they're the ones who are making Twitch.tv the premier platform to see all this stuff.
Then that brings me back to my original question, which is what kinds of things is that studio going to help create? That I can't do in my green screen in North Dakota.
I mean, that's the whole point of doing these kind of things, is so that you get the creators in to figure out. I mean, that's
a fair answer.
I mean, I feel like I could, everything you just said, I could have said to you 3 years ago about the YouTube create space. I could have snidely said, like, I don't understand it, but what can you do there?
I could see the YouTube creator space
there all the time, Tom. You can't live there all the time.
No, I could see that before it was open, because you had episodic content, right? You saw something being shot in somebody's bedroom that were like, oh, if they were in a studio, that would work better, because you could have sets and you could have better cameras and better lights. I'm thinking Twitch. When I think of Twitch, I'm thinking it's different. Maybe I'm wrong, because what people like is seeing the video game being played.
I mean that's certainly part of it. That's the MacGuffin, though. I think you're confusing the MacGuffin for the content.
So give me some examples of the other kinds of content that I'm not thinking of.
Because of this game or that game, they tune in because they love this guy and it's his adventures. It's like, look, Twitch.tv is sliders. And every time your favorite character lands in a new land, runs around and completes a quest so he can slide off to the next game. Let go of the. I'm not entirely sure what your hangup is on this.
I'm just asking for examples. That's all. And you can't. But T2 just gave me one, and I think this totally gets it. Twitch Studio makes sense for stuff like this. He's got a link to an esports tournament. That makes a lot of sense. It's a place to actually hold events, right? And people who are like, I'd love to have a tournament. I'd love to stream it. I can't afford a big arena like major leagues can, but I could do it at the Twitch studio. There's that now I'm starting to see it. That was all I wasn't, I think you were taking my question as a contradiction of like, I can't think of an example and therefore there aren't any. I just really see it as different than what YouTube does because it's generally not episodic content. It's not fiction. It's not drama.
Which is why I was making the parallel to ESPN and esports, but I guess you missed that. But
no, but the parallel to ESPN is I'm in a studio where I live. I'm Sports Center, right? And I go to the games, and that wouldn't work at Twitch either.
All right. I apparently I'm just not getting through. Maybe I apologize if I failed to communicate this.
Well, it's obviously a two-way failure. So I'll act, you'll sin. We'll negotiate a connection and move on to Gear Up. Little Gear Up file. You can play. There you go. I think we put the Gear Up file to sleep. This is a little different Gear Up, Brian, because we're not talking about a set-top box. Usually that's what we're talking about. Some kind of dongle or a set-top box.
Well, it doesn't just have to be a gizmo you attach to your television. You know, watching what you want, when you want, wherever you want might include sitting in a comfy recliner with a giant-ass screen that you could never afford to put in your house.
This is gear in the theater to help you watch movies. AMC spending $600 million to rip out old seating and replace it with recliners. The theaters have already converted a few of their locations, and they've seen an attendance increase of 80% in those locations. What I found interesting, Brian, smaller cities are being converted first because smaller markets tend to have fewer theater goers. And so they don't want to mess with the places where they already have frequent attendance. And even when they get to those major markets, they say the recliners won't lean back as far because they want to have more seats.
This is a very smart decision. It's a step in the right direction because understand, why do we go out? We go out to have a novel experience. And when a moving picture was novel, that's all it took. When a movie picture that talked was more novel, then we went and saw those. When a movie picture had 3D and was in higher definition, we went and saw those. Nowadays, and we kind of saw this foretold by Spielberg and Lucas, that we're moving to a world where the novel experience involves premier luxury accommodations that are better than what you could have at home, which usually include pizza and beer. And of course, I'm talking about the Alamo Drafthouse. This obviously does not leapfrog them forward into Alamo Drafthouse territory in my heart, but it does say that they at least acknowledge that they got to do something different than just announce, well, where are the movies? Where you go on Friday night? You need to seduce that crowd. And I think they could do it, but I think it's going to have to be more than reclining chairs.
You know, what's really interesting is AMC has a line of theaters called dine-in theaters. They're sort of the TGI Fridays to Alamo Drafthouse local gourmet restaurant, but they're the same idea. And they have these recliners. I swear to God, this is them going, wait a minute. We wouldn't have to do the whole dine-in movie thing. We could just put the recliners in to these theaters that aren't getting frequent attendance, and suddenly it's stadium seating. Remember when stadium seating came along? And everybody's like, ooh, I got to go to that theater. They've got the stadium seating.
Do you know
right?
what this is? This is roughly equivalent, and I'll be curious to see if you agree with this or not. This is roughly equivalent when Apple named the iPad Air as their new entry-level laptop. Essentially, what was a premier luxury good was able to be delivered at a price that was low enough that all of a sudden that was the cheapest MacBook that you could get, was the MacBook Air, and that was the baseline to go up from there. I think that's what happened is they've taken the trappings of luxury. They figured out that they can retrofit those seats. They can bring what feels like a higher end quality luxury experience, but do it for a traditional base level price. Unlike something like you go to the Alamo Drafthouse, I can't get out of that place without spending $100, $50 on tickets and $50 on a meal.
Yeah. And AMC Dine-In Theater is sort of like the $80 version of the Alamo Drafthouse versus the $100 version. And this is them going, well, why not take it a step back? It's genius, right? Because now people are like, have you been to that AMC theater? They put recliners in,
Yeah.
and I can hear the conversation being exactly like stadium seating. Because I don't know if you remember when all the theaters suddenly converted and everybody was like, oh my gosh, you can sit in a seat and not have somebody block your view. It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's genius.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, I think this is the next level. And I'm not going to say that they're immediately going to go to actually restaurant style service. I think that'll continue to be the higher end, but I think
they already
have to bring.
They have AMC Dine-In, right? So it's levels. Exactly.
Right. Well, good on those guys.
I
Hey,
like
man,
what Jay wants.
let's say real quick, Tom,
Yeah.
that somebody liked us a lot and they said, yeah, you know, I'm on Patreon and I gave you some money or whatever, but I just want to throw money in your face and I just want some reason to do so and to get like a digital download, something that won't take your time and that also will reward me and give me a little extra piece of who you are and what you're like. What do you say to those people?
I say thank you for buying my books.
What? Wait, you have books?
Yeah, I have books.
Like what? Name one, sir.
The United Moon Colonies.
Oh, name another, sir.
Lot Beta.
Okay. All right. So you got books. Wait, name a third, like a series of novellas that are coming out, or not novellas,
Tech history, chronology of tech history, or the monthly tech history singles.
Man, you actually do. You got a lot of books. And where can people buy these books, Tom?
Brian, I'm glad you asked. There's one place that has links to all these books, TomMerrittBooks.com.
Right on. I'm going there right now. Tom Merritt.
Some of them are even worth reading.
Oh, you.
No, the Amazon Kindle singles that Scott Johnson illustrates are actually pretty amazing. 99 cents a piece, all the things for a particular month, usually 3 or 4 items per day. And then he's got some illustrations in there as well. The chronology of tech history is pretty good as well. But anyway, yeah, TomMerrittBooks.com is the place.
And speaking of Scott Johnson, we got to talk in maybe in spoiler in time. One of the things we'll spoiler is our experiences at Nerdtacular. How does that sound?
Is that really spoiler in time?
Yeah, dude. Because I actually don't know who won the Frog Pants All Stars, so you could spoiler it
So I
for
could
me
spoiler you
and tell me the story.
Yeah, sure.
The spoiler.
Sounds good. Let's move into Under Surveillance.
Not like real estate. It's all about location. Under surveillance.
Amazon has announced a few new pilots, a new hour-long pilot coming in the next Amazon pilot season. They haven't said exactly when they're going to release them. It's called Hysteria, about a town where a strange psychophysiological illness, one of those, causing violent fits and spasms, Brian, appears to be spreading through social media.
See, you know what? This is an awful lot like was it Halloween 3 where they played some like haunted TV signal and then all of a sudden your face melted and became bugs or some crap. This on the surface sounds like such a stupid idea. However, I actually think it could be really good if, for example, you know, if they were to write it around, and to me, the strength of this can live and die on the plausibility of it. If you think of something that's like I don't know, like a hypnotic thought that keeps looping you back in, or you know, something that induces seizures, but derives a great deal of pleasure. In other words, I'm talking about cat memes. Maybe this is all about cat memes or something else. I think this could be cool.
Cat memes cause violent fits and spasms. You know, they actually do. Now that I'm thinking about it, people go, "Oh, it's so cute," you know, and they kind of shake, and that could be it. It's also derivative. There's Selfie coming out on ABC, and The Following with Kevin Bacon was out, I think, on Fox. And they all involved like social media causing harm. I think this is just a subgenre or a trope. Like,
that's fine. Look, man, I'm in favor of mashups. I don't feel like everything has to reinvent everything every single time. So I'm excited that there's another take on it. And plus, also, I just like seeing more players in the game. And even though Amazon,
like that too.
I've not been blown away by any of their originals so far. Maybe this will be the one. You never know.
Also, Hand of God, about a judge on a vigilante quest to track down a rapist. A half-hour-long dramatic comedy called The Cosmopolitans about young American expats in Paris. And Really, which is about life in Chicago.
Right on.
Really. Time for the front lines. Yep. Muster up. You lead us off, Brian Brushwood.
All right, dude. Aereo CEO Chet Kanoja wrote an open letter to customers Tuesday asking them to lobby your Congress. The letter appeared on a page with a form where you could enter your zip code and then tweet, email, and Facebook your sentiments to Congress. Two things. First of all, number one, good on him, because this is the way democracy works, is if the whole world were to rise up and say, this is bogus, you made a wrong decision. And I do believe that the Supreme Court made the wrong decision. I would like to think that I am the kind of principled person that will make sure to lend my name to this uproar and hope that it will tear down the walls, I am not optimistic about it. Tom, what about you?
Yeah, I'm not optimistic that it will actually change anything, although it is brilliant, because what the broadcasters were going to do if they lost in the Supreme Court was go to Congress and lobby them to change the laws. So this is fair for Aereo to say, well, let's do the same and see if they can muster that kind of support and get people to rally behind them. The problem is, it's one thing to get SOPA PIPA. It's another thing to get Barry Diller's money.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
At the Media and Entertainment Industry Forum in New York, CBS Chief Research Officer David F. Poltrak said, we actually make more money per viewer streaming than we do on television, apparently 10 to 20% more. But keep this in mind, kids. TV ad spending in 2014 is expected to be $68.54 billion, while internet video ad spending will only reach $5.96 billion, according to eBay.
This story is, in one hand, kind of a duh, but I like the fact that that the hard numbers belie the real reason for it. You know, we've been talking for years about how there's a reason that Hulu ads are better because they're targeted. You know whether or not they've been viewed. They're trackable. You can make sure you can even quiz people afterward. Dollar for dollar, they're a better investment. But when you're Procter & Gamble, you just want to throw $20 million at the wall and be done with it, right?
Yeah, and it's also, the prices will come down as more people want to buy video on the internet.
Yeah, correct. Hey, man, Starz picked up the TV rights to Neil Gaiman's novel American Gods. The project was previously in development at HBO. Starz have picked up Brian Fuller to produce and run the project. Fuller created Dead Like Me, Wonder Falls, and Pushing Daisies, and most recently, Hannibal. He also worked on season 1 of Heroes. Man, that is a hell of a pedigree. I loved American Gods. I was surprised that it fizzled out over at HBO, and I couldn't be happier. If Starz is a weird pick for me in that I don't know of another property that really blew me away with, but this could be the one that maybe crosses them over.
Yeah, they did Torchwood, a season of Torchwood, which was okay. It was not my favorite season of Torchwood. And the other shows on Starz that were originals that I've tried to watch, with one exception, and I'm trying to remember the name of it, it was the sci-fi show, have really let me down. So the fact that they've got Brian Fuller makes me feel more positive about this too, because season 1 of Heroes made me watch all the bad seasons of Heroes in the hope that it would be as good as season 1 again.
Yeah.
Shooting for 2 new Sherlock series begin in January 2015, although one of the series will only be 1 episode long. It's essentially a special. They're going to shoot that in January, and then later in the year, they'll shoot 3 more for another full 3-episode season. Martin Freeman told The Telegraph he thought it was likely Sherlock would do a Christmas special, so that might be when we see the one that gets shot in January.
So wait a minute. What is the difference between a special and the traditional episodes? Because they're like 2 hours.
Difference, yeah, right? Like, they're all specials. I think the difference is they can only shoot 1, and then they can shoot 3 together. So it's going to be a long time between the releases, and they don't want to hold the first one.
I don't know. It just sounds like making a lot of noise. Personally, I think they're making a tremendous mistake by bringing back Moriarty so quickly. I think they had the chance to make it a genuine surprise a year or 2 or maybe even 3 years from now, but instead it's like, hey, remember last episode when he died? Well, he's back. So
well, by the time it airs, it'll be a year or 2. So
okay, no, you know that doesn't count. When you watch them in a row, it doesn't work. New Zealand ISPs just added a global mode that lets geo-blocked video stream, because you might have guests from somewhere else in the world. Basically, this is an ISP that is offering a VPN service built into its core functionality, right? Is that with the express intention of being able to circumvent geo-fenced stuff? Like, are you okay with this? This is our kind of morally
interesting,
gray
right? Because it's an ISP. The ISP is called Slingshot. They're just saying, we're building VPN in. Have fun with it. And then they put some language like, it's for guests. Don't break any terms of service, please. Somebody's going to come after them. You know they are.
Well, I don't see how they could, because we're talking about international law.
They're encouraging breaking
no
terms of service.
In New Zealand.
It doesn't matter, Brian. Someone will come after them, and now VPN will be put to the legal test somewhere.
Oh my gosh, you think that VPN's about to be pushed into the margins like BitTorrent?
Well, I don't know I don't know what the result will be. You may be right that it won't be turned illegal. Netflix is looking for taggers, or at least one tagger. These are people who actually watch things on Netflix and improve the descriptions with tags like Cult Classic. When you see those playlists, those are actually moderated and curated by real people. Netflix is looking for a UK/Ireland tagger. And Brian, I watched the video that was like trying to get people psyched up to become a tagger and apply, and they used the phrase, watch what you want, when you want, where you want.
I'll tell you what, man, I don't want to overstate our influence, but it seems like I don't think anyone else was saying that before we did. Wouldn't it be great if we coined this thing that sort of resonated throughout the world?
Well, here's the thing. Kevin Spacey said it, and that video went around the world, and that got people going. And I would like to think that the reason Kevin Spacey may have said it is because Dana Brunetti, his partner in Trigger Street, had been on Frame Rate a couple times with us and heard us use that line.
Yeah, that's Dana Brunetti. If you want to contact us and say, yes, you guys totally coined it, we'll be your best friends. Hey, man, you want to check in on the movie draft?
Let's do. I'm actually looking at the movie draft now.
Yeah.
And I kind of don't want to check it anymore.
I don't want to check it anymore either, because I'm pretty sure it's all over.
Actually, I'm not too far off the pace. I still have a hope. TMS is in front with 534 million. DTNS only 518 million, so not that far behind. Amtrekker at 491 million. Transformers was Night Attack's big hope. 175 million, got you up to 367. You've only got Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Is that going to be enough?
No. There's no way. First of all, we're going to limp forward. We'll barely get over 400 million. At best, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is going to be another 100 million. We're going to be like in third or fourth place with just over 500 million if we're lucky. Meanwhile, I actually would watch out for the morning stream. Morning stream in first place right now. They still have Planes, Fire, and Rescue, which number one will be terrible. Number two will make $100 million. And
no, it won't. It's a sequel to a terrible animation film that did not make $100 million.
It is a
I already did this
movie.
Once, Brian, because I had the first Planes thinking exactly what you're saying, and it was a huge disappointment.
Right, but the first Plane was a made-for-TV movie that got shoveled into the theater distribution. This one, from the ground up, was built to be a proper Planes movie in the Cars world, and it actually has decent star power behind it. I think Planes is going to do at least $100 million.
Well, if it does, then TMS wins, because Amtrekker has probably got the best chance of taking him down with Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. I am. He's at 491. Dawn of the Planet. I had Tammy last week, and it only made 33 million. It's not going to make more than 50 or 60. And I need Sex Tape to save me. That's not going to happen. Dawn of the Planet of the Apes is going to drown me there. So I'm going to be behind Amtrekker. The question is am I going to be behind Amtrekker, who's in first place, or am I going to be behind Amtrekker, who's in second place?
I'll tell you what, man, it's wild as we get closer and closer to the summer of slash film. They got The Purge Anarchy, which I'm seeing crazy advertisements for. They got Hercules, which we've seen crazy advertisements for months over. And Guardians of the Galaxy, man, you live in LA. You've seen all these freaking posters. Slash Film has the biggest marketing engine behind it for the last half of this. I would not count Slash Film out, even though technically they're in last place right now.
I've noticed when you see a lot of advertising for something, it tends to mean that they're not confident about the box office. Because I've gotten excited when I start to see a lot of marketing for one of my properties and then it ends up tanking.
I don't know about that. I'm reading the book Blockbusters right now, talking about the nature of big bets and about how, when you have a Lady Gaga record coming out, you want to, an LP, it's worth doing things like delaying it another 4 months, even though it makes them miserable, so that you can triple down on your bet and make it bigger and bigger. I think, yes,
that is true sometimes. And I think that might be what's going on with Guardians, but I don't think that's what's going on with Hercules or The Purge. I think those are like, oh crap, we need to like milk every cent out of this.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not, but I don't know. I guess luckily we'll stick around and find out. But I know one thing for sure: you can count on Team Night Attack not winning this year.
I think you can count on DTNS probably not winning either, sadly enough. Let's see what was on screen for us.
Got to add, like, I don't know, clown sounds or something in this. We need some kind of sounds.
Tell you what was on screen for me and Brian Brushwood this weekend. Nerdtacular 2014 in Salt Lake City, playing out before the screens that are our corneas.
Oh my gosh! You know what's funny is I just remembered. I'm going to write one thing down on there that I forgot that I had seen. I moved to LA this week and also went to Salt Lake City and went to Nerdtacular. And in the middle of all that, I managed to go to the movie theater and see Edge of Tomorrow. Have you seen it yet, Tom?
No, I haven't.
All right, so I'll have to speak in generalities. Man, was it better than I dared hope. It was a lot of fun. It was a really cool idea. And what I loved is that it did not insult your intelligence in that the parts where you get it, you're like, the moment you get it, they take, because it's basically Groundhog Day as a video game. They accelerate things as you understand the concepts, and they actually create a believable reason or believable enough reason for why this would happen and some internal logic. It was a funnier movie than I thought it would be. It was a more joyful movie than I thought it would be. And the animation of the aliens was hypnotic. I find myself going back and thinking about this alien creature a lot. I think I can't wait to watch that movie again. And I'm surprised that it really stuck with me.
Very cool. Yeah, I've heard nothing but good things about this from the people who've actually watched it. We went and saw, when I went and saw the movie about the woman who had cancer, The Fault in Our Stars.
Yeah.
My relatives went and saw The Edge of Tomorrow, and they loved it.
Well, and that's just it. Is like it's easy to get really pumped up about it. And by the way, the chat is still arguing about how much money Planet of the Apes is going to make. I agree. I think Planet of the Apes is looking at $150 million. I think the hype on that is great, and the reviews have been incredibly good.
I have watched The Shield, episode 7 of season 2. We'll talk about that in spoiler in time. I watched episode 1 of The Leftovers, which I know you had watched last week, so we can talk about that in spoiler in time. Before Nerdtacular started, I did a lot more on Rome. I did not get to season 2, but I finished season 1, and I totally sucked in. I really absolutely adore that. And I finished Silicon Valley, so we could talk a little bit about that on spoiler in time as well.
Yeah, in fact, we have an interesting twist about Silicon Valley, which we will get to when we review our dispatches from the front.
We will?
Oh, that was such a smooth segue. Our dispatches from the front. See, it was too smooth, Tom. I was
You're too smooth.
Good.
You're so smooth. You're like, you've sliced my arm off, and I don't even realize it till it falls off. I'm like, what just happened?
Hey, man, let's see. We got an email here with a link at orderofeducation.com link there where there's an ad. Somebody says, I came across this vintage Betamax print ad and was struck by how similar it is to the Cordkillers mantra of what you want, when you want, where you want. Oh, look at this. This is exactly a thing. Throw that on screen there, Zach. It really is a classic. It is reminiscent of this in all of its Betamax wood-covered Sony Trinitron late 70s, early 80s beauty that I really hope is about to show up on screen at any point. Otherwise, we could just go on to the next one.
Watch whatever, whenever
it's
with
not
Sony's Betamax SL8600. I mean, majority of our audience is audio anyway, so you'll have to look at the link in the show notes. But
just picture
it's the
there's
big words that say
photo
watch
that
whatever,
like
whenever. That's really the big deal, right?
Yes, agreed. Anyway, keep going.
We got an email from Aaron, our boss, who said, I came across a website tonight, rocoding.com, while trying to figure out what to do with my terabytes of MKV files that weren't doing that well on my Roku. I'm running Plex on my Synology and thought it's a very nice system. Transcoding is not the Atom processor's strong suit, though. Rocoding.com is meant for people like us who are a bit befuddled by all the options in Handbrake. I've been ripping my DVDs raw to MKVs, and this site simply provides a list of Handbrake settings for various source quality video to a given target, making it easier for your set-top box to digest and show it to you. MKV is not a native format for the Roku nor the Apple TV. This site was exactly the kind of thing that people have been asking for in forums for years. Thanks as always for a great show. Your boss, Aaron.
Yeah, right on. I like that when they call themselves our boss. Hey, Joel writes in saying, after listening to last week's spoiler in time, it became apparent that Brian had watched the season finale of Silicon Valley rather than the pilot. I expected this week's to open with that correction, but to my surprise, apparently no one has pointed that out yet. It is a non-linear show. The entire plot deals with whether or not to sell
It
for
is
$10 million.
not a non-linear show.
Oh,
is what
sorry.
he wrote.
It is not a non-linear show. The entire plot deals with whether or not to sell for $10 million or take $200,000 in seed funding. Love the show. Joel, yeah, dude, busted, guilty as charged. I blame and I almost used a curse word here, the utterly ridiculous way that HBO Go is set up. I do not understand why in the web interface, you finish one episode in a series, it does not ever take you to the next episode in the series. It takes you to whatever it's decided is in your queue or whatever it feels like taking to you next. And in this case, I went to Silicon Valley, and the first thing it showed me was the last episode. Now, here's the other thing that's weird, and this is minorly spoilery, is that strangely, the first and last episode are really the exact same stupid thing. It's about a guy who comes up with a really clever, advanced way to compress that beats all the competition. So in that regard, it didn't matter, it turns out, whether I watched the pilot or the finale, because I watched the finale.
Wait, Brian. So you're saying being spoiled didn't ruin your experience?
Well, all right. Hold on there, you. This is, you know what? Let's save this for spoiler in time. We'll talk about it then.
But yeah, we will talk about it more then. But you're right about the HBO Go interface. Like the watch list thing is virtually unusable and always wrong. So I'm not surprised. And it's awful. Like how would you ever suggest to someone to watch the finale of a show they haven't watched any of the episodes of? It's horrible.
I don't even know. It's freaking ridiculous.
Hey guys, I love the show, writes Scott. I think everyone is overthinking this Aereo thing. Of course, it is illegal, and I'll tell you why. I'm currently using my office iMac to record all my over-the-air shows using Elgato's iTV, 2 HD home runs, iTunes, and numerous Apple TVs. What if I let my next-door neighbor use my Wi-Fi so he can enjoy the shows I have recorded? And just for good measure, I charge him $8 per month for the privilege. Illegal, right? Of course it is. I'm selling over-the-air broadcasts that I do not own, and I'm not licensed to resell. Case closed. Aereo had to lose. Well, there you go. He sewed it up, Brian.
Oh, geez. Don't even get me started, Tom. In this case, I put this on because it's so fabulously, incomprehensibly wrong. Scott, you're a delightful person, I'm sure, and you're probably one of our bosses, and I'll give you a high five. But in no way does this even remotely parallel, if for no other reason than because you are downloading, you are consuming, and then reselling. That is the one thing that Aereo was built from the ground up to prevent. It was designed so that each person had their own equipment that they were individually renting, everything built from the ground up to comply with existing law. It's not circumventing the law when you build an entire business designed to obey the law.
Yeah. And Scott, I mean, you actually have a good point. What you're describing would be illegal, but it isn't what Aereo did. The analog to your analogy here would be if you used your Elgato TV on a dedicated computer and you let your neighbor access it for a fee and you never accessed it. That would be what Aereo did. They said, we're going to rent you the ability to access a single transmission from an antenna. A better analogy would be you set up an antenna with a sling box and you give the neighbor the password to that sling box and you never access that sling box either and watch it. That's what Aereo did. And what the court found was it doesn't matter what the technicalities of it. They would say to you, Scott, it doesn't matter any of what you said, Scott. The fact that a mass number of people were consuming the video makes it like a cable company and makes it a public performance. So they don't care about your Elgato ITV or anything like that. In fact, your analogy is about a single person, which would be outside the court's purview. It was the number of people accessing it that sort of made the difference.
So I'll tell you what, if you guys want to chime in on this, or better yet, if you want to tell us whether or not who failed to make their point, because I feel like we both failed, Tom. Because
no,
neither
did
of
I
us
not?
really
Did I
understood
not bring
the
this
other.
up? I meant to bring this up. I think J1's entirely solved our argument about Twitch earlier in the chat room. He said, Tom has it right on his front. Brian has it right on his front. The argument was like, I like pie versus why do you hate ceiling fans? And I think he's entirely right.
Very well put. If you like ceiling fans or you hate pie, then go ahead and write us at cordkillers@gmail.com. And of course, visit us at patreon.com/cordkillers. Thank you guys so very much.
We'll see you next week. Doom, doom, doom.